Hi there, and welcome back to video number 3 in our series of 3 videos with Jan Jenkins. Hi, Jan, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm eager to show you the last session here.
Absolutely. So the first 2 sessions were all about drawing the doodles, and then the next session was about coloring in your doodles. So what are we going to be working on today?
Well, today I thought I'd show you a completely different way of approaching your Zen doodling, and that's by pre-coloring your paper. You end up with this beautiful organic feel. For example, if I take a piece of paper like this and pre-color it, I can end up with something that looks like this after you've pen and inked it. So I hope you're going to enjoy this journey. And actually, we're going to be playing around with tea. Everybody has tea in their cupboard. You could use coffee if you don't have tea, but we're playing around with 3 kinds of tea today.
Before we get right into it, normally I just jump right in. You had told me that there was also something that our participants can do with the doodles after they're finished created. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet. After you've finished your Zen doodle, and I recommend you pre-measure your Zen doodles so that you don't have to go and pay for expensive framing if you end up with something that looks absolutely delightful, and I'm sure you will. So one of the things you can do is you can take a photograph of your Zen doodle, and if you go to Vistaprint, you can actually make bookmarks, and you can get your very own custom coffee mugs made. Perfect for gifts for your loved ones. Have fun with your Zen doodling, and I look forward to hearing from you as to what you've created.
Absolutely, and thank you. So let's get into the video.
This is our last session about pre-treating your paper for your artwork as an alternative to doing your pen and ink work first and then going back in and coloring. This provides you with a much more looser, freer, intuitive approach to your artwork. So there's several different products you can use to pre-treat your paper. In this instance, what I did was I actually have some of these tiny little spray bottles that I bought, and I pre-mixed up some acrylic ink in them, and I sprayed the surface of this piece of paper. You can also pre-mix up some watercolors and do it that way. I do have to admit some of these bottles have clogged with the acrylic ink, so in my next life I'm going to empty these and probably redo this with watercolor. So that's that. And you can also achieve other special effects by using different products such as salt. And for this one here, I actually used salt and sprinkled it on, and you get quite different blooming effects on your paper. And this one I also kind of splattered on there a little bit of iridescent paint, and it kind of had a neat effect on it as well. You know, leaving your paper black and white is beautiful. You can do that. You can leave it that way, but if you are like me and you like a little bit of color, then here's some ways to approach that. Now this one was actually done by spraying the paper and then using some saran wrap while the paper was wet and scrunching it onto here and then putting a book or something on top until the paper had dried. So you end up with some kind of neat effects when you do that as well. The end result is you end up with a piece of paper that you can start doing some meditative meanderings on. I have actually a couple of examples here to show you of what some of these look like after they're finished. So there's one that was done over top with the black Faber-Castell pen and then the gel pen for some effects. So the gel pen comes in a variety of different colors and finishes. You can get metallic, you can get colored, you can get plain white. And in this instance, I've used a little bit of all 3 of those in this particular piece of art, and you end up with a lovely, loose, soft feel to your work when you do that. The other thing is the Faber-Castell pens that I recommended for doing your ink work. You can get those in metallic, and you can also get those as a brush tip in different colors. The brush tip is quite nice to just kind of, for me, to just go around the borders of things. And then the last thing I wanted to do was just show you a couple of artworks here. This one was done over top of a piece of paper that was pre-treated with color, and then I put the saran wrap on it and allowed it to dry. So you can see that that ended up with a lovely effect to be a background underneath the design that you want to create. Okay, so I'm going to put all of this away so it doesn't get wet or damaged. We had already talked about the different kinds of paper. And for this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the effects of using different kinds of paper with pre-treating it with color. I have here some examples, and some are done on ordinary Xerox paper and some are done on the Canson XL watercolor paper that I had recommended to you in the first video. So you can see here what I've done is with a brush I've applied just a wash of some different colors. And this is the thicker paper. Now the thinner paper, this is the same thing, but you can see that the colors are a little bit different. The paper actually dried pretty flat, but it does have a bit of a warp to it, and you just have to embrace that and make it part of your creative journey. And then you can get into your special effects, and some of your special effects are splattering your paper. If you do a few splatters, so you end up with some kind of neat effects with a few splatters. I don't know if you can see the detail, but this one had a bit of salt on it, and I ended up with a bit of blooming happening on it. So the brushes I use are very budget friendly. They are available at Michael's, Simply Simmons, and you can get nice soft bristles, and you can get a variety of round and fine point and square brush to use. Okay, and so all of this pre-treatment was actually done with tea bags. I used 3 different colors of tea bags, and I ended up having some neat effects on the paper. There's one that I did that was larger. I found the smaller ones actually worked better. The paper didn't buckle as much when I was working on it. You will notice that with the Xerox paper it does buckle quite a bit, but you just let it dry and it will end up flattening out quite nicely. Okay, so from there, we need to start thinking about our design. But first I'm going to demo how to do this. And I'm going to bring out a demo piece. Now what I've done is I've taped these pieces of paper down. And I want to show you a couple of different effects with this. I've taped it down onto one of these flexible chopping mats so that you can get these at the dollar store. I find them very handy to use because you end up kind of having a nice surface to work on, and it kind of contains it, makes sure nothing spills through to your table surface. So on here, you wonder, what kind of tea bags did I use? Well, for this process, I used 3 kinds. I used black tea, we call it orange pekoe tea, which was an English breakfast. I used a pomegranate raspberry because I thought that would give some nice colors. And then I used an Asian green tea because I thought that might provide some nice yellow. And what I did was I steeped my tea in just I'll just move this, in just a tiny bit of water. And you can see I've got some good strong colors coming through here. That's doing pretty good. I actually left the tea bags from the first exercise in here, so there's double tea bags, so maybe that'll mean nice strong colors. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be using. The other product I'm going to be using is a bit of Sifto salt, okay? And I will be using this brush to brush some of the color on, and I will also be using this brush to kind of do some splattering. I wanted to let you know that when you're using your brushes, never use hot water to clean them. You'll end up with the glue softening in the ferrule, and you'll end up with the bristles falling out. So take good care of your brushes, and they should last you a long time. Don't leave them soaking in water. Don't stand them this way to dry. Make sure they're down like this, okay? And they'll last you a long, long time. Now, the reason I tape this down is so that the paper won't buckle and curl, because if you don't have it taped down, that's exactly what it's going to do. And so what we start off with is I want to make sure that I have some distinct colors separation, and then I'll go back in with some splattering to kind of provide some overall harmony to the piece. Let's see if I can shuffle this around so you can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit better. So the other thing I've got is a cloth, and I've got a bucket of clean water. Usually if I'm trying to work fast, I keep one brush for each color, and then I don't have to clean the brush in between. So for this instance, I'm going to use 2 brushes simply because then I don't have to keep cleaning the brushes. This works great for dabbing, and you just throw it in the wash, right? We want to work fairly fast. We don't want to put too much liquid on the paper, enough so that we can get some nice blending, and we have to let it dry just a tiny bit before we start doing splattering and things. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention, is I have some dried tea that I thought we could sprinkle on one of the squares, and that way we can see what the 3 different effects are with the salt splatters and the berries, okay? All right, so here goes. I think the first one we'll do will be the one with the salt. So let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. It's always a big, there, I'm putting some color on the paper like that. And the neat thing is you can let this dry, and you can go back in and add more color, which is what I'm going to show you. So see how I'm just kind of moving the color around a bit. I'm leaving a little bit of white spaces. I have this tendency to not do that enough. Okay, so that's that. And now we'll go in with some of the green tea here. And I'm just going to dabble that in a little bit here and there. And it's just a very, very subtle difference. See, I'm kind of splattering it in so that it moves around a bit and gives a bit of interest to the piece of paper. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit before I do some more splattering on that. This next one I'm going to do the salt. So for this one, again, I just add some water. And you know, I'm just being very, very random with this and hoping that it ends up kind of all working together, hey? And you know, like I said, when you're doing the patterning, if you make sure that your colors are at least in 3 different spots on your page, then you end up with a more harmonious effect. Now it's very, very subtle, which is what you want, because you don't want something that's going to be too aggressive, then your design work will not stand out. So on this one, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt, and then we can see how that reacts. Now obviously for this demo we're not going to wait for everything to dry. I've already pre-done some of this. Oops, I got some salt there. Oh well. So I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. The other thing is I still have to do some splattering on that one, right? We're doing the third one here. I just got to make sure that you guys can see it. And on this third one, it's the one that we're going to put the dried tea. And the dried tea is like a rooibos type of tea, which is a red tea. So we'll see what happens, hey? Okay, so let's sprinkle some of this on there and see what happens. Make sure we get some of it in the wet spot. This is kind of neat because it has a little bit of bergamot and a little bit of lavender leaves, so there's some different colors that can happen with this. Okay, now things are looking still a little wet for splattering, but we'll go ahead and give it a try. And you know, it's all about experimenting and playing around. Oh, there we go. Can you see that? Hopefully you can. Let's do this one with the black tea. You can do more splattering if you wait until it's almost dry, and you end up with some completely different effects as well. You just end up layering and layering. Okay, and I'm going to put just a little bit more of this yellow color. All right. Okay, so you end up with 3 totally different techniques, and as I mentioned, if you wanted to take your saran wrap and smoosh it on this one, you'll end up with something totally different. There. We'll just leave that on there and see what happens. Okay, so that's that. The next thing we want to do is show you what it looks like dried and how you can work another layer on top of that. So here is the ordinary Xerox paper. It's dried completely. And when you go to peel the tape off, use green tape. Please don't use the beige tape. This stuff is just so sticky, it'll just rip your paper. So when you go to peel this off, and I would pre-size a bunch of sheets for either putting behind mats or you can use them in those cards I mentioned in the first video. But it's nice if you pre-size them and have them all uniform, and then you could even scrapbook with them. Now when I pull the tape, I do not pull it up like this. You pull it at an angle, and you do it very gently and very slowly so that you end up not ripping the edges of your paper like this. Okay, so that's how you do that. And on this one I didn't put any loose leaves, so I'm going to show you the other one that I did that has a bunch of loose leaves on it, and the splattering and everything has become a lot more evident because this is the actual Canson art paper, watercolor paper I was mentioning to you. So on this one I left some dried leaves. I did splattering after everything was almost dry, and I did the salt. You can kind of see how that is. Let's brush the tea off of there and see what we ended up with. Oh, we've got some neat patterning here. Yeah, that looks great. Now I just got to get rid of this stuff, because I always like to have a clean table because I don't want to end up with unpleasant surprises on a piece of art due to a dirty table. Again, with this, you peel it back like that. Yeah, you just have to take your time like that. All right, and there you end up with some pretty neat pieces of paper to work on. Okay, so now you're going, okay, what do I do from here? Well, I was showing you this design in the first video, and again, without it looking like you're working on a white piece of paper, just pretend it is a white piece of paper. Use your pencils, use your pens just as you would if it was a white piece of paper. And so, for example, this one, I've started doing this same design on here, and this was a piece of Xerox paper. The end result was this here, with the different layering of the inks, etc. And I'll show you another one I did. I started off basically with this design here, and I ended up with this little beauty. I really like how the leaves and the flowers and everything turned out in that one. Now, demoing how you can add some extra color, what I thought I'd do is just put these to the side and show you if you wanted to use your water or your tea bags. Tea bags are great. Most people have them in the cupboard. I do not know how light fast they are or how the colors will change over time, so do be aware of that. But it's got a lovely organic texture to it. If you go in here, on top of what you've already done, you can start using the same thing that you splattered to actually color in your leaves. I'm just using a small brush, and I mean, you can keep layering. Now, do recognize that yes, the tea might have some permanent staining qualities, but the more you fiddle around with this while it is wet, the more chances are you will disturb the layers underneath. So in this instance, what I'm doing is I'm going to use two different colors so I can show you how that turns out. And then you can layer and layer, and you end up with something that's very gorgeous. So I'm just wanting to show you the different styles and effects you can achieve. You can go for vibrant and do your pen and ink and color in after, or you can use this approach. Once this is dried, you can actually go over it again. You could actually do some coloring in with your gel pens, and you could actually go back in with your Faber-Castell black pen as well. Now this is still wet, so I'm going to play around on the outside of this. It's kind of small, sorry about that. I'm just going to show you that with your purple gel pen, what I could do is I could actually bring in some other motifs into this design and just give it a little bit of added color and punch. And you know me and odds and evens, so I'm going to put a fifth one over here. There we go. Now I want to actually color in this one a little bit like that. Whoops. Okay, that's where I ended up The one color went and bled into the other color because it wasn't dry. And you'll notice that the leaves are, I didn't do the red on the same side of all the leaves. It gives it a little bit of difference, a little bit of punch. And we'll try this and keep it separated. So there you have it, just some additional examples of what you can do to end up with some really pretty artwork. This one I did not go over again like I did here. I'm going to try another one. I'm going to use some of these demo pieces of paper that I did for this video, and I'm going to play around with additional layering on top of another design once I've inked it in. Okay, hope you enjoyed that.
Well, that was really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jan.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope you and everyone else who's seen this enjoys it and gives it a try. Remember, we all start somewhere, and the more practice you do and the more you enjoy it, the more refined your motor skills will get, and you're just going to have a great time. And it's just such a relaxing, meditative way to let yourself meander.
Absolutely. So, Jan, before we hit the road, why don't you tell us a little bit about where the participants or the viewers can find you on the social medias, or if there's a website that we can contact you on?
Sure. There are links to my social media pages on the front page of my website, www.riverwestartworks.com, or I welcome you to email me, and my email address is jan@riverwestartworks.com. So have fun, enjoy, and have a great day.
And thank you, Jan. And as always, you can reach us at Wazegamin Community Arts on Instagram and Facebook. You can also email us at wazegaminCommunityArts@gmail.com. So thank you so much again for joining us, Jan. I hope you have a really great day.
Thanks, Ty. You take care.